The room wasn't dark enough. The digital glow of the kitchen appliances cast pale green shadows across the tile floor like ghosts that refused to rest. Adam Kessler sat hunched over on a too-tall stool, cradling a half-warm beer in one bruised hand and an ice pack in the other. His jaw still ached. His knuckles were red and cracked. But it wasn't the pain that kept him up. It was the silence and what he'd overheard, what he'd seen. He hadn't slept since the Christmas party. A tiny spark from the flickering microwave display danced against the ceiling. 11:11, mocking him with its illusion of symmetry. He hadn't believed in signs in years. But tonight, everything felt like an omen. His mind kept looping back to the hotel hallway, to that voice, her voice, laughing in hushed tones, her lips kissing a man who wasn't him. She thought he wouldn't follow her. She thought he was too tired, too trusting, too old to question her late-night outfit changes, the new cologne she wore that wasn't his gift, the way she suddenly began attending work events that never used to matter. Adam had ignored the signals for months, too focused on his project deadlines and early morning runs. And Lydia had known. She counted on it. But the moment he saw the dress, that black satin thing with a thigh-high slit that didn't scream corporate event so much as bedroom audition, he knew something was wrong. Still, he let her go. He hadn't wanted to believe it. Not really. Not until the hotel hallway proved him right. And now everything was ruined. His mind wandered back to their first years, when Lydia was the girl who smelled like rain and coffee, who stole his hoodies and whispered poetry into his chest late at night, before the politics of work, the pressure of children, the slow grinding erosion of forever. Back when love meant something more than shared schedules and split grocery lists. But somewhere along the way, Lydia had changed. Or maybe he had. Adam set the beer down and flexed his sore fingers. Even now, he could feel the brittle crunch of the champagne bottle against Doug's skull. Doug, the vice president of operations. Doug, the man who bought Lydia that dress. Doug, the man who whispered filth into her ear while Adam searched for her in the ballroom. And Adam had heard it all. Doug's laugh, Lydia's nervous giggle, her attempt to hush him when she realized they weren't alone. The way Doug promised her more than a promotion. He promised her freedom, escape, something better. She hadn't stopped him. She hadn't even hesitated. And that, more than anything, was the knife in Adam's chest. What followed had been chaos. A shattered bottle, blood, broken noses, hotel security, cops that never came, Lydia crying with mascara dripping down her cheeks, trying to look innocent, but already too late. And then there was the gift, the one Adam mailed the next morning. 2 teeth, Doug's front teeth, wrapped in silk, sealed in a velvet ring box, delivered with a letter that began, "Lydia, I hope you enjoyed your party. Here's a souvenir." He hadn't signed it with love. He hadn't even signed his name, because that man, her husband, was gone, and someone else had taken his place. Someone who wasn't afraid to burn the whole thing down. Before the broken teeth, before the bloodied fists and velvet box, there had been whispers, little things Adam had ignored because love, when it's deep enough, dulls the senses. But the signs had been there, hiding in plain sight beneath the quiet rhythm of their routines. Lydia Kessler used to be the kind of woman who hated mornings. She would crawl under the covers, mumble curses at the sun, and beg him for 5 more minutes. But lately, she was up before him, hair curled, lipstick on, perfume that stung of temptation. She'd hum while getting ready, tap messages into her phone with secretive little smiles, and walk out the door like a woman with somewhere to be and someone waiting. Adam noticed the change, but he didn't question it. He couldn't. Not after 23 years of marriage, 2 grown sons, and a history he'd clung to like a man afraid to drown. His days were predictable. Wake before dawn, lace up his shoes, run 10 miles through the quiet back roads outside their Florida neighborhood, return home just in time for a protein shake, a cold shower, and a goodbye kiss that had become more mechanical than intimate. He'd leave for the firm, Kessler and Jameson Consulting, where he'd spend the day buried in spreadsheets, meetings, and a constant tick of time. Their evenings had become quieter. Lydia would scroll through her phone, sipping red wine while Adam iced his knees and caught up on emails. The laughter they used to share had been replaced with half smiles and polite questions. Did you eat? How was your day? Did you call the plumber? It wasn't that they fought. They didn't. And that was the problem. Silence had taken the place of intimacy. And Adam, in his heart, had been too tired to fix what neither of them seemed willing to save. But Lydia had found something, or rather, someone, who made her feel alive again. It started as an accident, a flirtatious joke during a staff meeting. Doug Ramsey, her superior, a man who never wore the same tie twice and always smelled faintly of leather and power, complimented her presentation. He leaned in too close when he spoke, called her the company's best-kept secret, told her she had the kind of mind that shouldn't be hidden behind a desk. Lydia laughed it off at first. She'd been married for too long to take it seriously. But Doug didn't stop. He'd bring her coffee, text her late at night, whisper things in her ear that made her cheeks flush and her thighs warm. She didn't mean to flirt back, but part of her wanted to be seen, wanted to be desired, wanted to feel like more than someone's wife. The affair didn't start with sex. It started with the idea of escape, a hotel room booked for a team meeting out of state, a bottle of wine shared after hours, hands that lingered, breath that quickened, and a kiss she didn't stop. It was supposed to be one time, but it never is. They met once a week, always after office hours, always in places where no one would recognize them. Doug promised her the world, promotions, independence, a fresh start. And Lydia, caught between guilt and euphoria, let herself believe him. She still came home to Adam, still smiled through dinner, still kissed him goodnight. But her body belonged to someone else, and she knew, deep down, that she was digging a grave for the life they'd built. What Lydia didn't know was that Adam had already started to suspect. It began with the late-night calls she claimed were from friends, the mysterious purchases on their joint account, the secretive way she changed her phone's lock screen. He told himself he was imagining things, that stress was making him paranoid. But when she bought that dress for the company party, the truth punched him in the chest like a brick. He told her it was too revealing. She accused him of jealousy, of insecurity. But Adam wasn't insecure. He was certain. That's why he followed her that night. Not because he didn't trust her, but because he no longer had a reason to. And now, sitting in his kitchen days later, Adam understood that betrayal doesn't just hurt. It erases everything. Years of memories, holidays, family dinners, quiet mornings. They were all gone, tainted by the sound of her laughter in someone else's arms. But Adam wasn't done. No, Doug might have lost his teeth, but the real revenge hadn't even begun. Adam didn't want to just hurt them. He wanted to ruin them. The plan had started to form even before the divorce papers were printed. Adam wasn't the kind of man to scream or beg. No, his pain took shape in silence, behind locked doors, with spreadsheets, bank records, and legal documents. He had time, and Lydia had no idea what was coming. Because Adam Kessler didn't just want justice. He wanted them to feel it, to watch everything fall apart piece by piece. And he would make sure they did. Let me know to continue to part 3, where the layers of Lydia and Doug's deceit deepen, Adam's plan for revenge unfolds, and everything begins to unravel. It'll be darker, more suspenseful, and emotionally loaded with betrayal, inner turmoil, and an emerging storm they never saw coming. 2 weeks after Adam mailed Doug's front teeth to Lydia in that velvet ring box, the world started shifting beneath their feet, and not in the ways they expected. Doug had been suspended pending an internal review, but the damage was already done. Gossip spread through the company like wildfire. Employees whispered in break rooms and group chats, screenshots of Lydia's flirtatious messages circulating like currency. Her name became a punchline. Her reputation, once built on charm and competence, now fused with scandal. And Adam? He remained silent. He hadn't answered a single one of Lydia's dozens of calls. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than any rage. But behind that silence, he was working. Adam had spent the last decade building quiet equity, minority shares in mid-size firms through discreet investment arms. He knew the corporate world better than most. Lydia and Doug had underestimated him, believing he was a tired husband too numb to react. They didn't realize he was about to outplay them both. At night, while the ice soothed his fists, Adam made calls. He spoke with lawyers, corporate contacts, old friends who owed him favors. Within a week, he found something Doug had missed. 3 mismanaged accounts under Doug's oversight. Money funneled to side projects, fake invoices, bloated expense reports. Nothing explosive on its own, but with the right framing, it could look like embezzlement. Adam had no intention of alerting authorities just yet. No, he wanted Doug to suffer. He wanted his job to unravel like a pulled thread. Quietly, publicly. The revenge wasn't just about fists. It was about power. Meanwhile, Lydia was unraveling in her own way. Her calls turned desperate, her voicemails laced with guilt. She hadn't seen it coming. Not the humiliation, not the fallout, not the realization that Doug was never going to rescue her. After Adam's letter and the Christmas incident, Doug grew cold. He began dodging her in the office, ignoring her messages, blaming her for his career nosedive. She was no longer the thrilling secret. She was a liability. One Monday morning, Lydia sat in the HR office for 2 hours before learning she'd been reassigned to a non-client-facing role with reduced pay, her promotion gone, her standing tarnished. Whispers followed her everywhere. She wasn't the rising star anymore. She was the wife who got caught. Still, she held on to hope that Adam might forgive her. That maybe, just maybe, she could undo the damage. She even drafted a letter. 8 handwritten pages, smudged with tears, where she confessed everything. How Doug seduced her. How lost she felt. How dead their marriage had felt before she made the worst mistake of her life. She never sent it because 2 days later, Adam made his next move. It was a Tuesday evening when a courier knocked on the door of Lydia's apartment. She had moved out of the house voluntarily. The envelope had no return address, just her name in bold, centered script. Inside was a legal document, stark and brutal, an audit request of all shared finances. A second sheet listed joint assets and bank accounts, but at the bottom was the real dagger. A formal petition has been submitted to dissolve all remaining ties, effective immediately. You may retain your personal vehicle and retirement accounts. The marital house will be liquidated. Proceeds will be split pending sale. Signed, Adam Kessler. She sat alone, staring at the words as her phone rang again. Her mother this time. Lydia didn't answer. She couldn't. There was nothing left to explain. Doug wasn't calling. Adam was cutting ties, and the walls were closing in. But what Lydia didn't know, what Doug didn't see coming, was that Adam's plan wasn't over. The corporate takedown had only just begun. Adam reached out to a journalist friend from his early consulting years. The guy owed him a favor. The story Adam proposed. A decorated family man walked in on his wife and her boss at a corporate holiday party. The twist? The boss had been grooming her for months and padding his own pockets on company time. The story ran anonymously. No names, no photos. But the details were sharp enough for those who needed to know. By the end of the week, Doug Ramsey was relieved of his position. Lydia saw the email from HR during a silent lunch break. She stared at the screen, her heart hollow. Adam hadn't just left. He had erased her. And still she hadn't hit bottom. That came one morning when she drove past the house they once shared. It was being staged for photos. The realtor sign out front read, "Coming soon." She parked across the street, watching strangers walk the perimeter, admiring the porch Adam had built with his own hands. This was her punishment. But Lydia still didn't know that Adam wasn't done, because her greatest lesson, that was coming next. It was almost poetic, the way Lydia found out the house was gone. She hadn't received a call, no letter, no polite update from the realtor. Just a glimpse of it in a viral home tour video on YouTube. There it was. Her former living room, the kitchen where Adam used to sing off-key while cooking, the master bathroom where she once cried quietly after a first night with Doug, all captured in cinematic 4K, narrated by some real estate agent with perfect teeth calling it a cozy retreat for modern families. She slammed the laptop shut. There was no warning, no goodbye. It felt like the final nail. She texted Adam, "Please meet me, just once. I need to explain." She never expected a reply. But that night, at exactly 10:45 p.m., her phone lit up. One word. Tomorrow. The cafe was nearly empty. Just the whir of the espresso machine and the hum of quiet jazz bleeding from the speakers. Lydia sat in a corner booth, dressed in the one coat that still made her feel like herself. Wool, emerald, elegant. It covered the weight she'd lost, the exhaustion that had hollowed her face. Adam walked in right on time, trim beard, crisp jacket, calm. He looked better, stronger, and that hurt more than she expected. He didn't smile when he saw her. He slid into the seat across from her and said nothing. I wasn't sure you'd come," Lydia began, her voice trembling. Adam folded his hands. "This is it. Say what you need to say." She flinched at the bluntness, but she'd asked for this, so she dove in. "I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I need you to know I didn't plan to hurt you. I didn't fall out of love. I forgot who I was." Adam tilted his head, silent. "I wasn't trying to replace you," she went on. "Doug was just something reckless, something that made me feel like I still mattered." "You mattered," Adam said coldly. "You just stopped believing it because someone else offered you fireworks, and I gave you quiet mornings." She closed her eyes, tears threatening. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just didn't want to disappear without saying it." Adam stared at her for a long moment, then quietly, "Lydia, you didn't disappear. You self-destructed. I just moved out of the blast zone." She couldn't breathe. "And Doug?" Adam leaned forward, voice low. "You think he would have saved you? He left you to bleed, and I let him, because he needed to see what you threw away." Her tears fell freely now. She didn't try to stop them. Adam stood. "I came here to give you something," he said, reaching into his coat pocket. She expected keys or maybe a letter, but it was a flash drive. "What's this?" she asked, confused. "The last 3 months of your emails," he replied. "Everything Doug ever wrote you. Everything you promised. Every lie." She blinked. "How did you—" "Doesn't matter," he said. "You'd ruin me. That you'd bleed me dry in the divorce. That you were his now." Adam's jaw flexed. "So I sent it all to his wife." Lydia's heart stopped. "He's married?" Adam smiled for the first time. "She called me. Said thank you." He turned to walk away. "I loved you," she whispered after him. He paused only briefly before saying, "No, you loved how I made you feel safe, but you chose danger, and it bit you." Then he left. The story could have ended there, but Adam wasn't done. Doug's life fell apart within weeks. His wife took the kids and filed for divorce. A criminal investigation followed. The false expense reports Adam uncovered turned out to be deeper than anyone thought. Fraud, mismanagement, even blackmail rumors began to swirl. He was finished. And Lydia? She was left behind in the ruins. She spent her days bouncing between temp jobs, trying to restore some dignity, but the whispers never stopped. Women in her building called her the mistress. Men avoided eye contact. Her old friends stopped inviting her out. Her parents barely spoke to her. Her sons, Adam's pride, refused to return her calls. But the worst was the silence. The deafening, hollow silence of knowing she had nothing left except her own reflection. Adam, on the other hand, flourished. He sold the house, moved into a quiet lakefront property, and started a part-time consulting gig just to stay active. He began painting again, something he hadn't touched in 20 years. His sons visited every weekend. His neighbors called him the calm one, and for the first time in years, he felt at peace, because he wasn't angry anymore, just done, because some people need to feel the fire to understand what they burned. And Lydia? She felt it every single day. 5 years later, the city had changed. The skyline was brighter. Newer buildings glittered against the night, and Adam Kessler barely recognized the stretch of roads that once led him to late-night grocery runs and quiet Sunday walks with Lydia. But one thing hadn't changed: the ache. It wasn't bitterness anymore. It wasn't rage. It was that quiet, dull echo of a life that once had promise, dismantled by betrayal, and buried under decisions neither of them could undo. He no longer hated her. He simply didn't know who she was anymore. Or maybe he finally did. That realization came on a winter evening when he got an unexpected call. "Mr. Kessler?" The voice was young, nervous. "Yes?" I'm calling on behalf of Lydia Shaw. She asked if you might be willing to visit her. She's not well." Adam froze. He hadn't heard that name in years. She'd taken her maiden name after the divorce, disappeared from social media, cut ties with nearly everyone. What happened? "She's in hospice, liver failure. They don't expect her to make it through the month." He didn't respond. Not for a long time. "Should I tell her you'll come?" "Tell her I'll think about it." He didn't go immediately. It took 3 days. 3 days of walking along the lake, painting in silence, eating alone at the diner where he used to bring Lydia after movie nights. He spoke to his sons, asked their opinions. The younger one, Ben, said what Adam already knew. "If you don't go, you'll wonder. If you do, at least you'll know." So on a Friday afternoon, Adam walked through the quiet halls of a hospice center he'd never planned to visit. Room 208. He knocked once, then entered. She looked like a whisper of who she once was. Pale, gaunt, tubes in her arms, sunken cheeks. But her eyes, those were still Lydia's. "Adam," she breathed. He nodded, sat down beside her bed. There were no flowers, no cards. "Didn't think you'd come," she said, a trace of that old fire flickering in her weak smile. "Almost didn't." "I figured," she whispered. "But I'm glad." He didn't know what to say. He studied the floor instead. "I deserved it," she said. "Everything. You were right about all of it. I didn't come for an apology." "Why did you come?" Adam sighed, folding his hands in his lap. "To see the end. To understand if any of it ever mattered." She nodded slowly. "It did. To me, it always did." They sat in silence for a while. The beeping machines, the ticking wall clock, the sound of breath struggling to stay steady. "I kept the letter," Lydia said suddenly. "The one you sent with the teeth." Adam looked over, surprised. "It was brutal but honest, and I read it every year on Christmas." He didn't respond. "You were the best thing I ever had," she whispered. "And I threw it away for someone who saw me as nothing but a quick win." Her voice cracked. "I thought he'd save me from my boredom, from myself. I didn't realize until it was too late that you were the one who was holding me together all along." Adam's eyes burned, but he didn't cry. "I'm not here for closure, Lydia," he said quietly. "I made peace with everything a long time ago." "I know," she whispered. "But I didn't. I kept searching for someone else to blame, but it was me." She reached for his hand. He let her take it, just for a moment. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, her voice a thin thread. "But thank you for being here. For seeing me one last time." Adam nodded. "I'll send Ben," he said. "If you want to see him." A faint tear slid down her cheek. "I'd like that." He stood to leave. At the door, he paused. "Goodbye, Lydia." She didn't respond. She just closed her eyes. She died 2 days later. Adam didn't attend the funeral. His sons did. They said it was quiet. A few nurses, one distant cousin, no eulogies. But she'd left a letter behind for him. "Adam, if there's a heaven, I won't get in. But if there's a space between wherever you go and wherever I end up, I hope you'll forgive me enough to meet me halfway. Not as your wife, but as the woman who once loved you. Flawed, broken, and foolish. I'm sorry, L." He folded the letter, burned it, and stood at the edge of the lake, watching the smoke disappear. He felt no satisfaction, No triumph, just peace. Because revenge wasn't what saved him. Letting go did. And in the end, that was the only closure worth having.